On this episode of Bootstrappers, we're going to talk about how to bring your maintenance department in-house. We're going to talk about the benefits, the drawbacks, the good, the bad, the ugly. That's next on Bootstrappers.
Welcome to Bootstrappers, a unique program designed to help make your business better. From property management to remote workers, Bootstrappers is here to help your business succeed. Bootstrappers is a production of Anaquim LLC, so let's lace up those business boots and join Bootstrappers with Jeremy and Gwen Aspen.
Welcome to this episode of Bootstrappers, where we talk about topics that are important to real estate entrepreneurs. I am your host, Gwen Aspen. I'm here with my lovely spouse.
This one. I'm that one.
Jeremy Aspen. And we have an awesome show for you today because I've seen this topic on every property manager Facebook page, and it is, how do you bring maintenance in-house? What are best practices? What are tips and tricks? We're going to go over the good, the bad, the ugly. And we're going to tell you stories, and this show is going to be good for anyone trying to bring maintenance in-house, or if you're already doing it and you want to compare notes, this episode is for you.
And so Bootstrappers is powered by Anaquim, and Anaquim helps property management and real estate firms transform and scale their companies to dramatically improve profitability. Whether you need a virtual assistant or a 24-hour call center for maintenance, leasing, and call overflow, or you just need back office support, give us a call, Anaquim.
And if you are a fan of the show, share with your friends, like, subscribe on YouTube, leave us a nice message and a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts. We love the feedback. We will send a book to the most insightful review on Apple Podcasts after the show. And stay tuned till the end to hear more about our book giveaway. So, Jeremy, back to our topic of maintenance.
Yeah.
So you've brought in maintenance.
Yeah, so one thing, like when we go around to those conventions and everything, that is one of the main topics people talk about, because a lot of companies are small enough that they don't really know how to broach the subject, how to bring maintenance in-house, and so they're always trying to make a decision about whether or not it's the right time to do it. That's what we can do with this episode, try and make it so that people can walk through that process of knowing whether or not it's time to do it, whether they did it too soon, or whether they just should have done it a long time
and just
ago.
Learn from our mistakes. So,
Yeah.
So anyway, so let's talk about Wistar Group Property Management Company, the company that you manage. When did you guys decide to bring maintenance in-house, and tell us about that?
So it would have been, like everybody, when you're starting up the company, one of the things I think you're most afraid of is having employees. It is, because it's me, it's my partner, and anybody else that we can kind of sucker into getting on this journey with us. And we're all working as independent contractors, especially having come, which is most often the case, from the real estate industry, where everybody's used to being an independent contractor. So it really kind of boiled down to, we strapped up our boots and kind of just did what we had to do. We would dispatch vendors. We ran into a couple of people over the course of the years the first couple of years that just wanted to work. And so they mostly just started working for us. They would track their time on a piece of paper, how many hours they worked, and then we would, at the end of the day, write them a check as if though they were a contractor. And everybody, there are tons of people that are doing that. And so what happened over not too much longer, it became pretty clear that these people that were contracting were either doing things our way or they were having to just leave. Well, that's a problem.
The moment when it's like you're riding that fine line between an employee, because you're like, hey, you should take this fair housing class, and they're like, I don't work for you.
Yeah, well, or they don't want to go to work that day, but you told people that you needed work to be done, and or you were going to get it done, and well, that's it. You couldn't force the issue,
right?
And if you did, then you're kind of breaking the law,
right?
And so we got a little bit scared of that, and made the decision, okay, we're actually going to have employees.
Okay, so describe what you brought in-house and what at Wistar Group still is done out of house, because I think that's an important distinction. It's not like we do everything.
Yeah, that's true. We do everything that we can reasonably expect full-time employment for. That's probably the breakdown. So like having a guy that just really has a loaded tool belt that can do a lot of
handyman.
Yeah, a good handyman. That guy you can keep busy when you just have maybe 100 unit, 200 units. They can be a part of either the maintenance and or the turnover process. So that's kind of the first one you go to. You want to get somebody that's that can really kind of do everything. And over the course of time, you always get as many of those guys as you can. And then we also started to do enough HVAC work over the course of the years that we have a licensed HVAC guy. And so we have essentially we have an HVAC company in the company.
So you don't do snaking though?
No, we did that for a little. So snaking the drain. It seems so alluring that might be an easy one because there's always so many plumbing issues. But
especially in Omaha. So our housing stock, we should say, is generally older.
In the Midtown area, yeah.
So there's a lot of snaking issues there.
And there's also, so you've got a small snake, medium snake, big snake, and a really big snake. So, and it's like, where is it going to be? Is it going to be in one truck? Well, if it's in one truck and you're all over the city, then you can't really get there as quickly as you'd want to anyway. Those things always break if you don't know how to use them. And eventually, our $3,000 machine broke, and we just threw their towel in and just said, "Now let's."
So we still outsource snaking. What else do you outsource?
So almost all plumbing, certainly anything that requires a license, and all electrical because it's just too dangerous to mess with, and any big general contracting work. So we might have a $250,000 job for putting new decks on apartment buildings. Those we will hire out. We'll get bids for and kind of just general contract it. And when applicable, and we have guys that are available, we'll put them on the job if they're the right fit. But otherwise, the takeaway though is, I think, don't be afraid to turn people into employees. It's really easy. We use Alliance Group, and they work, I think,
they're an employee.
A professional employer organization, and so your employees actually work for them. They handle all the HR, and then you pay them, I think, some sort of a monthly fee to do all of the administrative work.
And when we did our comps on that, it ended up that we saved so much money in workman's comp that it actually paid for the payroll service and the essentials. So one of the other benefits of using a PEO in this case is, like, if you have someone drunk on the job, or someone doing drugs, or someone with inappropriate photos on their phone, then you can
videos.
Yeah.
Of themselves.
Not that ever happened. Never happened. But then you can use them as your HR group and be like, okay, so what's the next step? How do I get this person, tested to see if they are drinking on the job? And they can kind of be a consultation, and that makes it easier when you're just getting started. Also, you need a handbook if you're going to have a bunch of employees. So they generally have at least some kind of handbook for you to use in the meantime until you really hash out all your policies on that kind of stuff.
But the workers' comp thing, that was the no-brainer for me, because we joined, we were a team of, let's call it 20, 30 people. And we joined the PEO, which has 10,000 employees. So they were able to negotiate or make us part of other similar industries. And we had a workers' comp package that we made money using the PEO contrasted with when we didn't. It made that much of a difference in the workers' comp, because workers' comp in some of these areas of work, when you get audited, are up to 20% of your invoicing. So you can, if it's roofing or it's gutters, something like that, 20% of whatever you invoice out would go to workers' comp. And if you don't have workers' comp and you get audited, then you have to come up with the money that pays the difference. So it's just a good idea to pay workers' comp. But that helped.
Cool. Okay, so I want to talk about the benefits of bringing maintenance in-house. So we do bring in more revenue because of it. You want to talk about that?
A lot. Yeah, so like that's there's one of our competitors here in town does actually prefer to think of management as a loss leader for the maintenance. And while I understand the logic, that he'll undercut us every time on the management fee, I also don't think they do a very good job on the management side. But the point being that it's worth it. Like it's
worth it from a financial standpoint. If you want to make more money with your property management company, yes, you should try to be profitable with management. But maintenance is very helpful to top line revenue.
Because it's really the only way you can deploy a high quality service to the field.
Okay, so let's talk about
way.
the details about that. Why is it a higher quality service to the field when you bring maintenance in-house? What are the benefits that you've seen?
Because you're allowed to control it, one. You're not... because, one, you're doing a whole bunch of stuff internally that you can track. So you should be able to identify where the person was, what they did, identify when they're not doing what they weren't supposed to do.
They can take pictures of it. You can control
see the material.
quality.
You can check to see if they bought a Snickers bar. Like it's all stuff that you can look at and don't need to worry about, and can concern yourself with not passing on to the client or controlling the quality.
So another one on that point would be sexual harassment is always a scary thing with tenants. And so you can say to them, like, here's our policy on what you can talk about, what you can't talk about. Here are the limits of that discussion. Here's what you do if someone's inappropriate. And you have more control, whereas if it's a vendor, you really don't have control over how they treat the tenant. And when in a world where 5-star reviews make or break property management companies, that's a huge deal.
Yeah. And so cheap is expensive also. If you do have a best quality, like a very good quality maintenance team, you get to charge a little bit more, and you're still a better value for your client, which reduces your headaches substantially. There was something else you said that I forgot I wanted to mention, but
another thing is like just simple things like requiring booties when people go into someone's house, or making them wear a standard shirt so they look good. Because a lot of the times, making sure people look presentable is an issue.
With like trucks, which we can talk about also, or
that's
the
later
fleet
on
vehicles.
In the show.
Fair housing, I wanted to touch base on that because if you hire a third party to go out and a tenant shows you her boobs, and that happens, and it happens to every man. I guarantee it happens to every management company. We've got some stories.
Okay, well.
Do you want to talk about that, guys?
Not right now.
But a lot of stories on like boobs and solicitations, like trying to trade rent for sex. If that happens to a vendor and they handle it inappropriately, guess who gets sued?
The maintenance
You, the
company.
agent.
Yeah.
No, the property management company.
No,
gets
that's what I'm
sued.
saying.
Right.
Yeah.
So now you can always sue the maintenance company that you hired and probably get somewhere, but you're going to be the one that gets sued because you're the one that's responsible for fair housing.
I don't think people really understand where they're still liable even when it's a vendor. I feel like people think that they have washed their hands of the liability, and it's not true.
In Nebraska,
at least in Nebraska, is it state by state? You think?
I don't think it. I think it's actually pretty much everywhere because we have agency. We are the agent of the client, and so in that we are acting on behalf of the agent. If we were to choose on behalf of the client, if we are to choose a bad vendor that makes those kinds of mistakes, it's our fault and vis-a-vis the client's fault. It always falls back onto the client. So the only way to protect, and I think the only way to protect yourself, is that if your company has a training system, a certificate or whatever, that can demonstrate that no. If you look at here, we have a certificate that says Bob Jones took our fair housing or sexual harassment
prevention class.
And so we took reasonable steps to protect the tenants. And then the action falls on the person that committed the crime.
Well, and then you'd also have to follow up. Like you'd also say, oh, we found out about that. We fired them. Like you also have to hold people accountable in order for it to fall through.
And you also have to regularly train them. Like it couldn't have been 3 years ago. They took training, stuff like that. And that's part of what.
And we're going to talk about best practices later in the show. But those are some really good things about why it's beneficial to bring maintenance in. Another big thing would be more control over wait times, because when you use vendors, they have other clients. So like if they're bad to you and you're like, oh my God, you lied to me. You said you'd be out there. You're not out there. And now the tenant's mad. I lost the owner. They're like, well, you're one of my clients. I did a bad job with you, but I still have income. When you're an employee, if they do a bad job and you fire them, then they have to go and find another job. So people tend to do what they're supposed to do more often.
Yeah, and there's because when you have a vendor, especially if they have other clients, there's kind of a nonchalant attitude about, I know I said I'd get it today, but as with a lot of contracting work, it didn't happen today. And then it just kind of pushes, or something else came up as an emergency. If you have it in your own system, then you can pick, okay, yes, this is all, like this person does have an important thing to do. This person has a little bit less important thing to do. This person's a little bit closer. You can assess the situation and deploy the assets.
And you can assess it in terms of your clientele. Like, is this owner really high maintenance and they're going to notice that it was late? Or is this owner a little bit more lax? Or is this tenant more understanding? And you can use the whole environment of your business to make a business decision about where somebody goes and what the emergency is, whereas the vendor doesn't care, doesn't have the awareness of the whole system, and they're not as reliable.
Well, and if you have a decent software system, you should be able to see that it's 3:00 in the afternoon. This technician that was assigned to the job to be done today is still at their two jobs prior. That might be a trigger to call them up and say, like, what's going on?
Or do we call the tenant and just say...
Well, that's what you'd have to do. You have to call up the tenant, or use that as an opportunity to find out what's going on, and call up the tenant, give them an update, and get permission to come late. Because if you're doing that after the technician was already supposed to be there,
everyone's
you're explaining,
mad.
And everybody's mad. And
whenever you're explaining, you're losing.
That's a good rule in politics.
Yes. Okay, so another thing is weekend maintenance. So living in Nebraska, where we have very few seasons where the temperatures are normal. It's either like crazy hot or crazy cold, and you're dealing with those HVAC, heating issues. We have to make sure that we're responding on weekends to heating and cooling calls.
Yeah.
I mean, it's not optional for us. And so having more control over weekend maintenance is a huge deal, because a lot of vendors just don't answer the phone.
And I've been around the country and I've seen that some clients do have really good vendors that they can rely on. And there are some exceptional vendors. Yep. It's not a long-term play though. Like, you want to have that kind of a person in your organization, because they can handle everything way better, and you get all the credit. That vendor is also sharing that high-value service to your competitors. Like, if you can have that atmosphere, that culture inside your company and make it a differentiator, then you've got something better than your competition.
That's a really good point. The other thing that I know you love about having maintenance in-house is that you don't have to go through the quoting process, which takes forever.
Quoting sucks. Especially if you're a small company.
Especially when you're a maximizer like you. You're like, it took you 3 days to get out there to make a quote, and then you haven't even done the work yet.
Well, and it's also discourteous to send out a vendor. So a client says, I need 3 bids. It's a leaky pipe. Okay. All right. You need 3 bids. That's fine. So you start to use your equity that you have built up with some vendors and say, hey, could you go check out this leaky pipe? And it's a $95 job. The vendor went out there, identified it as a nothing, but didn't have the authorization to do it, so they left. You've done that to 3 of your employees, and you
mean 3 of your vendors?
3 of your vendors. You send this low bid back, or the one of the 3 that actually responded, because no shit, you're going to send that person. And then, that's their second trip out there. And so what you're essentially doing is you're inflating your own pricing. You are half as valuable a client of that vendor as you would be otherwise if you could just send them out there. Like if you can just understand that it's a leaky pipe, it's probably not much. Let the vendor spend a certain amount of money, no problem, but just make sure they explain it. And they can get back to you with an invoice and that the job is done. That's so much more valuable than waiting on. If you have your employees internally doing it, you just go out there, you get the job done, and it costs what it costs, provided you sent the right employee and all that stuff. But you can tell if you did.
One of the other things that I love about keeping maintenance in-house is the branding opportunities. Everybody has a beautiful hat, a beautiful sweatshirt, a beautiful shirt. Even our water shutoff tags are branded.
Yeah, and even
it's so beautiful, you guys.
So if you go into, probably 3,000 homes in Omaha, they all have a sticker that says Wistar HVAC.
And even when they leave, they leave a card, a survey card, and that's branded. And it just leaves the impression with the tenant that they're dealing with a high quality property management company. And this is an amateur hour. And what I found is when people have confidence in their management company, they aren't as obnoxious. So if they know that you guys are good, they're going to wait for you to call them because they have confidence in the process. Whereas if their impression is that it's rinky-dink, they're going to babysit you. And that's going to waste money because for one maintenance call, they're going to call 3 times, and then your customer service person is wasting that time talking to the same person about the same service issue, which at the end of the day, you only get to invoice for so much. So we talked about all the positive things about having maintenance in-house. Let's talk about some of the drawbacks, because it's not all unicorns and puppies, is it?
It's not all unicorns and pony puppies. It's I'd say the biggest downside is having an infrastructure that can support it.
So let's talk about the billing, because it is much harder. It's not like you just get the invoice and then you just...
Well, so in my experience, where most people kind of get goofed up is they have basically one set of hours for the billing and something that kind of parallels that for payroll, which really doesn't make any sense because it's really the same time. So we learned a lot. We've actually developed our software to accommodate for that kind of a quirkiness. But suffice to say that if you have a technician that is clocking in and clocking out of jobs, use that same mechanism to track where they were for that particular job. And then if they aren't there, you're tracking their time as overhead. So it's another job, it's just overhead. And then they clock into another job, it's billable hours. So that you have one spreadsheet that will tell you where the person was, whether it was at a client's property or in your office. You can identify where they were and bill those billable hours.
Well, and not only that. So what you're getting at is somebody making you money or not?
Yeah.
And really analyzing with people, and then you can talk to them about it. Like, I need you to be way more profitable. And I need you to clock in, like, you are slow. Like, what's up with the smoke break? Like, why does it take you so long to get from one?
Actually, and smokers do cost more money.
Well, why does it take you more time to get from this place to this place? Like, if I Google this right now, it should take you 15 minutes, and it took you like 45 minutes. So you can have really good conversations with people to make them more profitable. So if you have a good system to clock in and clock out, which our software is Rent Manager, and it has Rent Manager app suite, and they can click in on their cell phone to clock into jobs, and then they can clock in. This is especially great on the weekends. As soon as they get the phone call, they're clocking into the job, and they're charging the drive time as well as fixing the job, and then clocking out when they're done. So it's more...
Yeah, that's stylistic, I suppose. The way that we do it, like dashboard time to the job is billable time.
Yeah. But I mean, you're billing for the full amount of time because they're going to charge you, that extra amount for working on the weekends to keep them.
Yeah, which we never finished that part about on-call stuff. But Yeah, tracking the time is probably the biggest headache when it comes to doing it, and you've also got to have some sort of a system that supervises the job.
So like the smell test, is that what you're talking about?
Well, no, yeah. So there's that, but also you've probably got to have a supervisor or a property manager that goes out and inspects at least a certain percent of the jobs that are being done, just to help make everybody aware that there is a quality control system in place, because just that a quality control system is in place is enough to actually control quality to a very large extent.
So do you think that taking pictures at every job and then having someone review them is enough of a quality control, or do people really have to go out there?
Yeah, you have to go out there. A certain number of the jobs you have to go out there. And it's even better, like in our system, we know exactly where they are in real time, and so we can just go out there and see them, and maybe it looks like they're delayed. A supervisor can jump on the job with them, help them get it wrapped up so they can get the next job done. And having that kind of visibility has all sorts of value.
Also, a lot of vendors don't know how to use technology. And so training someone on the technology, having them and requiring them to use it, requiring them to take pictures on every job so that you have that evidence for the owner that things got done. The new toilet that we said we'd install is installed. Really helps with owner confidence in the work. And also ensures it's another way of ensuring quality. And
I think a big one is communication with the tenant. If you have your own employees, you get to have a format, like a script on how you handle the conversation. You call them the day before, for instance. I think this is what we do. You call them a day before to make sure that it's okay and set up a rough time. And then you call them about an hour before you're going to get out there. And then, so if you do that, you keep that kind of a cadence, that kind of a structure, then you're helping it not be an uncomfortable, confusing instance with your tenant. Because if you don't show up, like a vendor doesn't show up, or a vendor just doesn't have the same cadence for communication as you would expect, things start to fall apart because you don't know what the vendor actually told the tenant. So when the tenant calls to complain, you're
in a he
right
said,
out the
she
gate,
said.
And you have to say, I'm sorry.
And
whereas if you know that your employees are saying a certain thing, calling at a certain time, and it's logged like it is in ours, then you can call their bluff and say, that's not true. It looks like we called you at 9:07, and then at 10 o'clock, there was no answer. And so, then you don't have to get the technician on the phone to find out what the hell happened. It's in your software.
Yep. And this is another reason why having all your calls recorded is a huge deal.
Yeah.
Because then you can know, like, oh, they were rude to me. Were they? Were they really rude to you?
Turns out once in a while, you run into some liars.
So with the app on the phone, so this is another, I know we're going to get into best practices later, but if you have a software that allows you to have the phone calls tracked through an app on their cell phone, then it will look like they're calling from your property management company and not their personal cell phone, which is a huge deal because if they like the technician and something goes wrong in their house, they're going to call their cell phone directly. It won't go through your system. And then the person's not going to pick up because it's the weekend and they're not working. And then they're going to blame you for not fixing their heating in the middle of winter. And you're like, well, you didn't call us. And they'll be like, yes, I did. And it ends up being a disaster. So requiring people to use the app to call people and never give out their cell phone is a best practice, but I'm digressing because
we're
not there yet.
I did not realize how hard it is to have a maintenance company in-house. It actually is. I mean, you do have to be dialed in. You do.
You have to have processes and procedures.
You just have to be committed to doing it right, because if you're not going to do it right, you can definitely do it wrong.
So another thing, so ongoing training is a drawback. You have to have like an annual training schedule. We went over, how about safety and liability is always one of the drawbacks too.
Well, okay, yeah. So, yeah, you have to have a training system and safety. We have a safety board, and the board meets to discuss things that they've seen out in the field, things that maybe they ran into one-off situations just to kind of identify it and process it, because it's a real threat. These guys that are out in the field, they're at times in a very dangerous spot. We've had an employee die due to a gas leak, but fortunately for us and their family, we had done all the right things to train employees about how to handle certain situations. And had we not done that, it could have been a really nasty lawsuit. But as it turns out, if you do things right in your company and you protect your employees, then you're doing everything you can be reasonably expected to do.
And they felt it, like our employees felt like we were being responsible. So the safety committee meets, they talk about problems out in the field, and then they are the ones that devise the training for the group. Mm-hmm. So the new training comes out of that committee, and it's there's one manager on it, but it's really employee led for the most part. And we try to elevate people through that process, but we've always been committed to safety. We always want people to stay safe. It was the worst thing in my career, one of the worst things in my life, when Clara died, and I don't want to get into it on this show because I'll cry. But I am glad, and I would, when things go really, really wrong in your company, and you have to live with yourself after that happens. Having a safety committee that was working, doing a good job, and our efforts to keep people safe kept me from losing my mind.
Well, and here's the truth of the matter. Like, if you do get sued for somebody being harmed in your on the job, and you lose the case, the odds are you probably deserve it. Like, you have to put up a wall of protection for you and your employee, like the liability issue, but also the actual safety wall, so that people are operating in the most safe environment. Obviously OSHA and all that stuff, but I know that when that incident happened, the one thing I was able to tell everybody was that if this was in any way our fault, we're going to pay the consequences, and happily. Like, if it's a career destroyer, it's just the way it is, because she lost her life.
Yeah,
I lost my company.
We would have deserved it.
Yeah, and I'll take losing my company than she got the worst.
That's the proper response. Yeah. But so anyway, the safety and the liability are real deal things, and I think before you decide to go into maintenance, you've got to be extremely clear on your values as a company, and you have to live them every day, because it is dangerous. You are liable, and you are responsible to keep your people safe. And if you're not up to the task, and if you have trouble caring about people, you shouldn't own a maintenance company.
Yeah, it's probably true. What are the 4 ways that people can die in property management?
Well, the ones that I train on are fire, carbon monoxide poisoning, natural gas explosion, and a technician being mistaken for an intruder and getting shot. So those are the ones that we have very extensive training on the first day. There are other weird ones that can come up, like sinkholes. I know that's super weird, but it came up on a property management Facebook page. We don't have those really in Omaha, but there are other things too. But those are the main ones I've identified, and really, it's just a thoughtfulness, listening to your gut, and taking action, and not having a cover your ass. The cover your ass mentality in property management is very dangerous, and so that's something that in maintenance, in customer service, it's easy to get complacent. And in a company culture, it has to be, whenever you see it, you've got to put the hammer down and be like, that's not who we are. So
in order to make it feel a little bit less crazy and complicated, what you can do, and what we do, is that we have, during our 1-hour meeting a week, we have a safety point. Somebody puts together a presentation that demonstrates our policy or some some training about a particular issue. And over the course of a year or 2 or 3, it probably protects people from being harmed, but it also creates a paper trail that you can use to demonstrate that you are not negligent in training safety to your employees. And
they sign it, so they know they're being trained. So someone comes up with the training. It's based on what the safety committee comes up with. They have an agenda of what they're going to train on. They do the training. Everyone signs it who is there. And the manager follows up with people who weren't there, make sure that they understand the concept. And I was going to get into that in best practices. Go ahead.
Oh, okay. Well, and you're, it's not that you're pulling the wool over it's not like you're tricking them into making a signature to protect yourself from the liability. It's that in having these classes, you are actually protecting them, and that you're actually protecting them is a huge defense because you're doing the right thing.
I think the signature also is like, okay, this is serious. Like, I need you to pay attention. Sign this saying that you paid attention today. You know what I mean? Like it's them taking responsibility for the knowledge.
And sometimes it's little stuff. Sometimes it's big stuff. Sometimes it's already programmed. Sometimes it's a YouTube video that someone thought, that's
There's
useful.
some great maintenance YouTube videos. I want to get back into some drawbacks. It takes a lot of work, as you can tell from this discussion, to create all the processes and procedures and maintenance standards. And so that's a drawback. It's definitely a lot of time. I also want to say, working on weekends and holidays, if you're going to take maintenance in house, do not be disillusioned. Somebody at your company, more than just the person doing the actual maintenance, is going to work on weekends and holidays. Someone in management you have to make sure the calls are taken. You have to manage that people are actually going out to jobs. If someone's sick or has an emergency, you have to find a replacement. There is management on weekends and holidays, and it has to be accepted, and just don't be disillusioned. That's a part of it. I do want to talk about best practices because we've learned some cool things over the years. One is about the apprentice program. Can you talk about that?
Yeah, so it's always very difficult to hire good maintenance technicians.
Because
I don't know.
They're in such high demand.
And the good ones are busy. So, but we found that in putting a position out there as an apprentice for the different sorts of handyman work and stuff inside your own company is a great way to identify sometimes younger talent that is ambitious to get into the trades. And they are, in that they're ambitious, they're learning new stuff, they pick it up very nicely. They're not asking for the larger hourly rates because they understand that they're in the apprentice program.
They need training. They know they need training.
And they are also using our more experienced guys and gals to learn from. So they understand that in an apprentice system, the cost of the more expensive employee is being passed down through to them through an apprentice program. So it's been really neat, and we've got some of our best.
Well, so what I like about it is you get to choose based on personality and ambition level rather than technical skills.
Yeah.
And then you grow those individuals, you make them profitable, you talk to them about the profitability that they are in a really authentic, realistic way. They accept it. And it's been beautiful. And it also gives the more experienced guys a chance to really share their knowledge and skills that they've acquired over the years, which makes them happy. So we've found if you use the word apprentice in a job description, it's been a game changer for hiring high quality work and developing a high quality maintenance team.
Right.
A next thing I want to bring up is branding. So trucks, T-shirts, water shutoffs, we already talked about that, but a big one is the truck. So can you kind of go through?
Yeah, we just went through this. So we're buying 5 new vehicles this week. And so the question is is it actually worth it? There are some real big benefits. One is that when you have 7, 8, 9 or maybe 10 vehicles out there with your logo on it, people see it. and then they start to feel comfortable with your brand. And even tenants, when you show up with a brand that's recognized, they feel a little bit more comfortable. We're obviously all bonded, but they kind of intuitively understand that it's a safer organization to work for, or to have work on any of the issues that are that they're there for. And the maintenance cost of a vehicle that is new is predictable. You know what your maintenance costs are going to be over the course of the first year. Second year is a little bit more than nothing, which is the first year. And then 3 years, okay, then you start thinking about maybe rotating it out. But those are big deals, because if the guys are driving their own vehicles, which some of ours do, when their vehicles are down, they're usually out getting it fixed.
And that is a huge waste of time, and it happens all the time.
And I mean, I've on several instances, I've just paid for tow trucks. Like, they're sitting there calling around to their friends to get a tow or something. For $99, I got your tow.
The other thing is those trucks sometimes look like crap, and you're rolling up in a crappy truck, and the person is like, do I let this person in my house? Like, I don't know.
Yeah. And the saving grace is that they show up in a uniform still.
But still.
Yeah, I would say that maybe there's a good balance of their own vehicles, or because,
and we've had people have to earn it. Like, okay, you've been with us for a certain amount of time. Now you get the company vehicle, and their status.
Well, and it turns out I'm not turning over a $50,000 vehicle or $40,000 vehicle to just anybody. Like, they tend to be our more trusted employees, and I think it's somewhat of an aspiration for everybody. Like, because they're good vehicles. Like, they smell new, and they take care of them, generally speaking, or you make sure they do. And so I think there's a little bit of a status symbol to it, not just for your employees that they're working for a good company, but also just for your company being out.
That branding has helped with Star Group a ton. Okay, so I want to just talk about the key performance indicators that you use that have been effective for managing the maintenance department. Main one,
the TBR.
Okay, tell us what that means.
So it's the time build ratio. So it's the percent of their time that is actually spent on billable activity. So you want it to be at least 85%. That includes on average, right? So that includes training. That includes their overhead. That includes meetings.
You mean that you want them to bill out, have 85% of their time being billable.
Yep.
And the rest of the time is meetings and training.
Right. Yeah, right.
Okay. And so you use that. Do you have the manager talk to them about each person?
Every single week we publish what the TBR is. Now, it's also
for each individual.
For each individual. It's actually part of this billing system that we create. It's actually, if you use Rent Manager, call up Jeremy Yoner and ask for the e-billing that was developed by Wistar. They will sell it to you. It is worth every penny, and it's $2,000, and you get your timesheet, which segregates by the job that the technician was on, and the overhead, and it tells you what the TBR is right there. So if you don't have that, get somebody to develop it for you and put it together, because you have to have that sort of a measure. The other one, on time. If if a job comes in, it should be fixed within 48 hours.
I love it. And you just have standards. You have high standards, and you just maintain the standards, and you hold people accountable when they're not there. What about warranty work?
So warranty work, I mean, when it's identified, the e-billing system has that already. You identify how much it is, and you track it as an expense in your books, so that you can constantly hammer away at it in your weekly meeting. So there is one theme here: weekly meetings with your maintenance staff. Do it and have something very consistent. Agenda-wise.
So
itinerary.
You force the property managers to review all the maintenance billing, and then they do a smell test. And then if they have to do, like, if fixing something that should be $100 comes out $400.
Yeah, so
that's where the warranty work is identified, or it's identified because of a complaint or something, and then you aggregate it, hold people accountable for that kind of work.
Here's the process. You have a call that comes in, so you have the property managers set the scope of the job. The next one is you you get approval. You find out if you have the approval already built into the contract, or if it's over that amount, you call the owner and get the approval. When it's approved, it gets dispatched. And when it's dispatched, it's in production, which is when the supervisor manages. And then you've got done, billing review, right? The property manager looks at the bill, looks at the job, and says, okay, this is a leaky pipe. Wait, $700, that doesn't sound right. They can research it, find out what happened, add to the content of the bill, or issue warranties, talk to the management, whatever. But eventually what you do is you get it so that the job makes sense price-wise. You put it over to the billing, it creates the bill for you. And no matter what your process is, what software you're using, that is your process. If you are in property management, that is your step-by-step procedure, like it or not.
And then the last part is follow up with the team and talk about the things that didn't go well.
Yeah.
So that they can learn and do better next time.
And that's what the weekly meeting is for. So we're getting that weekly meeting. There's a structure, and it includes all of those.
This is a good segue to our book giveaway.
Okay, we're going to give away.
We did use the word traction, but when you talk about weekly meetings, that's what you
traction.
mean. So,
well, and actually, it wasn't always traction. We did this before too, but traction gives you that.
Yes, it allows for a good format for these types of meetings. So the book that we are going to give away to the most insightful comment on Apple Podcasts and 5-star review, if you're so inclined, will be Traction by Gino Wickman. Any final thoughts about maintenance, Jeremy?
If you're trying to make a decision about whether or not to bring maintenance in-house, the answer is yup.
Well, we'll end with that. See you next week here on Bootstrappers.
This has been Bootstrappers, a unique presentation designed to help you better understand how the world turns. Contact Gwen or Jeremy at hosts@bootstrappers.club or visit our website, anaquim.net. Be sure to subscribe to our podcasts on Apple, Google Play, Spotify, and our YouTube channel. Thank you, and join us next time for Bootstrappers.